Welcome everybody to another week here on the Alternative Edge. This week we are going to talk about some players you may not have expected. Guys like maybe Daniel Jones, maybe Derek Carr. Who would have thought after 2 weeks we would be talking about these two individuals? But so many different props to get into, some DFS values to see how they correlate together. We had a decent week last week as well as week one. But right now, we're going to get into week 3, the prop market, and the DFS values right here. And again, this is all powered by the Sharp app. You see all the accolades on the bottom. Go get the Sharp app today. Google Play, Apple Store, wherever you get your apps at, this is where you need to be. It's still free right now. It's not going to be free forever. So you need to get into the game immediately. Trust me, there are people hitting left and right. Everything in one stop. It's your one-stop shop. That's what it is for your sports betting, man. So follow that, the Sharp app, all sorts of formats. Download today. Sign up for a Sharp account. Use my reference code. You see it right there. Go right to that site or use the reference code HEAT, whatever you need to do in order to get the app for you and to get you rolling, because you do not want to miss the information that you're going to get. And this week on the Alternative Edge, let's start right off. And I'll tell you, I would have never thought that I would have been putting stock, into this New York quarterback, my man, Daniel Jones, who has been really consistent on a team who I think basically doesn't want to play for their coach, which is a crazy thing. But you look at what he's been able to do, and it's more about the rushing ability than about the passing ability that we're looking at, because obviously, listen, you're not going to get a ton out of Daniel Jones when it talks about he's not going to throw for 300-400-yard games, But if he could be efficient enough and give you 250, 260 and a touchdown here or there, it's only average. But if you add in, listen, this guy's got almost 125 rushing yards in 2 games and scored twice in the first 2 weeks. If he can give you 40 to 50 rushing yards a game, the top of that, with 260, 270, maybe a touchdown, I'll tell you what, Daniel Jones, he could be a guy to lean on. I can't believe I'm saying that, but as you see right here, obviously, there's this number, 5,800 for DFS, but he's plus 500. And what that number is, so everybody knows, I give you what he was as opposed to last week. So last week on DraftKings, obviously that means he was 5,300. He goes up plus 500, a huge jump for Daniel Jones. So this week he goes up against the Atlanta Falcons, who've given up 80 plus points in 2 weeks. This is not yesterday's Atlanta Falcons defense. None other than Arthur Smith right now, still trying to find his way as a head coach. So for me, the over 1.5 touchdowns is one of the easiest prop bets of the week, in my opinion. They're playing in New York. And again, even if Kenny Galladay doesn't suit up, because we're going to get to his counterpart later, is starting Shepard, Daniel Jones will just be able to tear apart this defense. Now, I understand if you look at it and say, he's only thrown 1 touchdown in both games, I understand that. But if you've watched what the Atlanta Falcons have refused to do, which is play defense and lock down any receiver on any opposing team, listen, you just have to see what the Philadelphia Eagles did against Atlanta in week 1, and the rest is history. So Daniel Dimes, 500 plus 500. And again, this is telling me if he's going up that much in DFS, they 100% expect him to score multiple touchdowns within this game. So in my opinion, over 1.5 is a very easy bet. Now, let's stick to the quarterbacks. And here's another guy who quite possibly is being underrated in 2 weeks, Now, I have killed Jared Goff. I've killed him many, many years. He's a statue. He's a stiff in the pocket. Now he's playing for a nut, an absolute maniac in Dan Campbell, who is yesterday's Mike Singletary Chicago Bears kind of guy. This is who we're dealing with. And Jared Goff has actually taken it as a challenge, and he's actually been very, very good in 2 weeks in the sense that he's thrown for over 600 yards in both games. Now, you have to temper the expectations because you have to look at the yards per average, right? It's only 5.9 and 6.8 in 2 games, respectively. Your average out to about 6.3. But the thing I'm looking at here is number one, I'm looking at, I love him as a DFS value. Let's get into that right off the bat. 5,200, and you're looking at where he is. The only guy above him that's starting, in the same value is Justin Fields, who I say what you want, he's going to have a hard time at Cleveland, 5,200, and below him and Mac Jones and Zach Wilson. So Jared Goff is not getting any respect from the DraftKings people. I can tell you that right now. And there's a reason why I'm selecting the under here. Now, not always do I give you unders. I do a lot of overs, right? I love the over bets, but the under to me, because it looked like if you look at the stats, and again, he's minus 500, okay? Minus. So that's a huge swing from last week. He was 5,700 last week. He goes against Baltimore, he gave up a ton of yards against Kansas City. Okay, they're dropping him minus 500, and I'm going to tell you why. It's because of the attempts. So you have to read in between the lines. It's because of the attempts. If you look at what he did in week 1, okay, against San Francisco, 57 times he threw the ball. Dan Campbell said, yo, wait, hold on. Let's stop. Let's take a step back and say, Jared's throwing way too much. Okay, so we're going to make him more efficient by throwing less. 36 times against the Green Bay Packers. His percentage, completion-wise, went from 66 to 72. That tells me that they're definitely going to keep it under that 40 attempt mark. And again, 36, I could definitely see this, maybe 31, 32 for Jared Goff. I see a lot of running with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams in this game at home. They keep these attempts down, keep Jared Goff efficient. So I think this is a really good bet right here for the prop market. I think, number one, he's a very good value for DFS. I think because of those attempts, and if you listen to what I'm saying about the last 2 games and the way the game flow has been dictated and the way his percentage has gone up with less attempts, I think Dan Campbell sees that, and I think this is why I'm going to go on the under for 38.5. Now, again, don't forget, follow the Sharp app, right? We're all about Sharp. And speaking of Sharp, you see the hat, you see the gear. It's right here. I mean, listen, I got it all over here, man. I'm loving every minute of it. So let's talk about my man, Derek Carr. You want to talk about a guy getting no respect, zero respect. And I've seen a lot of people saying, we're going to fade Derek Carr. We're going to fade Derek Carr this week. There's no way. Have you watched Miami play? Listen, I have to ask you, have you watched Miami play? I'm not understanding why everybody is worried about Derek Carr. Okay, now, what I will tell you is, if you look at his numbers, the best thing about Derek Carr right now that I like is he's throwing at everybody. He is not discriminating against anyone on that team. He is throwing at will to everybody that can get open. And he has been very, very efficient. He's averaging 68, 69% efficiency, which is really good. Now, the first game he threw 56, which is way too much. Second game, 37. They brought him down. He went from 61 to 75. Now, the biggest thing I like, his yards per attempt last week were 10.3 as opposed to 7.8. So he's going to the field even more. Now, well, I will say he's only thrown double touchdowns. Okay. But again, Miami, they do have Xavier Howard. They do have a very good secondary when they can play. Now, I don't expect them to go and score 35 like Buffalo and blow Miami out, but I do expect them to score some points. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get a pick 6, at least for pride, from Miami, which is why, for me, one of the numbers I'm going is the over 0.5 interceptions, which obviously means he's going to throw a pick. In my opinion, this is a pick game for Derek Carr, but I think this is like a 3-touchdown, 1-pick game, and the over 279.5, for me, I think this is the week Derek Carr goes right back again over that 300 mark. I mean, you're just looking at, this guy's got over 800 yards in 2 games. 400 yard, 435 the first game and 382 the first game, and he's only 5,900. Okay, so he's only 5,900. And you see he's plus 300 from last week. Okay, which they know it's going to go up. They know it's going to go up. So I love Vegas this week. I really do. I'm not fading Derek Carr. I'm rolling with Derek Carr. I can definitely see it's a 300 plus game, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. You get your over 0.5 interceptions. You get your over. You get your over 279 and a half. It's over all day with Derek Carr, and everybody's happy. Now, let's go right to running backs and to the man that was heralded all offseason in Austin Ekeler. Now, listen, I know everybody wants to make a big deal out of Austin Ekeler because he got hurt, before the first game, and wasn't used a ton. Still scored a touchdown, though. By well, still scored a touchdown. Let's not forget. Okay, let's not forget Austin Ekeler still scored. So everybody needs to just take a break. Everybody relax. Right? Like Aaron Rodgers said, relax. Everybody relax. Austin Ekeler has zero competition for carries on that team. Say what you want, he does. Okay, and did you not watch what Baltimore did against the Kansas City Chiefs? Kansas City, this is not the defense that you'd be expecting anymore from the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, there's a couple numbers that I want to get in perspective here. First thing I want to say is you definitely saw the difference from week 1 to week 2. Week 2 is the Austin Ekeler we drafted. Week 2 is the Austin Ekeler we know. 9 attempts. I don't expect him to get any more than 12 rushing attempts at all in any game. I expect him to get 7 to 10 targets every game. Exactly what he did. 9 attempts, 9 targets. That's an Austin Ekeler game. 9 for 61. That's an Austin Ekeler game. Okay, so right off the bat, that's exactly what we want to see. Now, 7,200, he's actually 100 less. So it kind of, in my opinion, it looks like they're thinking that he's going to kind of have the same kind of output. And they looked at Kansas City and they look what they were able to do. Look at what Baltimore was able to do against them. And they said, okay, Austin Ekeler regains all his shot. He had a really good week last week. So I'm going to go under on a rushing at 55 and a half because exactly what I just said. I don't envision Austin Ekeler getting those 15 to 16 carries. I still think he's a 9 to 12 range. And I don't expect him to go over 40 yards. Maybe 50 tops, right? I think that's going to be tempered a little bit. So I think the under is the play here, for his rushing yards. But the receiving yards, he's way over. I think this is a 50, 60, 70-yard game from the receiving output for Austin Ekeler. I think they're going to try to get after Justin Herbert. They're going to try to get in his head a little bit. Spagnuolo is a Philly guy. I remember Spags. He likes to get after the quarterback. He needs to make up for what happened to that debacle on prime time. So he's going to be out to rush the quarterback. Okay, so I can see a lot of dump balls in this game. So the 37.5 yards for me is very low. So that's why I'm going over. And then we're going to go Chris Carson. I think, again, this is a really good play. It is. Seattle, obviously they're not what they used to be on defense. Okay. I think we all know that. And Chris Carson is never going to be a 100-yard rusher. He's just not going to be that guy. Okay. But he's going up against Minnesota, who's given up at least 125 yards per game the last 2 on the ground. This guy's got no competition for carries. He doesn't have to worry about anybody coming in and spelling him. It's all going to be what he gets. Now, the first week, he has 16 for 91. He's giving that 6 points, 5.5, 5.7 game per average, average per carry. The second week against Tennessee, kind of lackluster, right? Only 13 for 31, 2.4, but he scored twice. And that's my point. This is a touchdown-dependent guy, in my opinion. Okay? He's a touchdown-dependent running back. He's almost like, he's not Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry to me is touchdown dependent, right? Chris Carson to me is touchdown dependent. And again, going up against the Minnesota Twins, who's given up that many yards, there's going to be a lot of scoring in this game, a lot of red zone attempts, a lot of red zone opportunities. And this is all going to breathe in to Chris Carson. So when I look at that and I was doing these numbers, that's why, again, he's even on the DFS market because, again, it shows the correlation is he's going to stay around the same as what he did last week. That's the expectation. So if that's the case, if you look at both of the weeks and you take the average, I'm going to go under. I can see Carson getting that 50 to 60 yards, but definitely possibly a 2-touchdown game. I could absolutely see him getting a ball out of the backfield, a couple more. We've seen that in the past where he's had these games, right, that all of a sudden they're throwing him the ball, and you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, he's not even the pass catching back, right? I mean, if you look at it, there's been times just last year alone, 4 games over 6+ targets. I think this is the kind of game script that we're going to see in Seattle against Minnesota. I really do. I think this is the exact game script that we want to see, and that's why I'm going under. I think he's going to be a good play, but I definitely am going to take the under. Now, let's go to the receiving market because I don't want to go with my lock of the week yet, right? I love the lock of the weeks are fun. The lock of the weeks are fun. Okay. I don't want to go to that yet. Okay. So let's stick with the Minnesota game. Okay. Let's stick with the Minnesota game. And let's go with Adam Thielen. So I really like Adam Thielen this week. And again, I'm going to tell you why. This guy just catches touchdowns. He just catches touchdowns. He has become the red zone man when it comes to Kirk Cousins. Now, obviously, Kirk Cousins has to get on the ball, right? Okay. But I really like Adam Thielen this week because, like we said it earlier, this is not the Seattle defense we're accustomed to. 15 targets in 2 games, right? I should say 17 targets, 15 catches, but 3 touchdowns in 2 games. Like I said, he's the touchdown guy, right? He is the absolute touchdown guy. So the reason why I'm going with the over of 5.5 catches is because each week he's been over that number. And if we, 9 and 6. So to me, it going against, when I'm looking at this prop market, I'm saying, okay, so let's number one, look at the DFS number. They're expecting him to go down a little bit. Okay, that's fine. You expect to go down. He had 9 and he had 6. So if I take the medium of 9 and 6, which is probably about 7.5, that means he's going to drop to maybe about 6, which is still over the 5.5 receptions. So for me, Adam Thielen, again, against no more leads in the boom anymore. That is way gone. Okay, hate to say it, but it's gone. All right, so we're not going to touch on that anymore. It's not the same Seattle defense. So the over for me all day on Adam Thielen. I think that's the solid play. Then let's go to a sleeper of a pick, okay? Which I love this pick, okay? We're going to go right back to that San Diego Kansas City game. Now, Kansas City has a lot of problems right now on the defensive side of the ball. And Jalen Guyton is the go and get it guy. Now, obviously, Keenan Allen is the wide receiver 1. Mike Williams is, as long as healthy, he's already proved this year that he's back and he's good. And he's definitely that solidified that wide receiver 2. Even Jared Cook has solidified him a role in that offense. But Jalen Guyton is the guy who, when you need to spark, you need the big play, right? You need to go up and get it. Now, if you notice, Hollywood Brown had an unbelievable game against Kansas City, and he got open a lot above this secondary, the first level, which means he got to that second level of the high safety. And I think Jalen Guyton can expose that for Kansas City, and it only takes one play. It only takes one play. So I like him in the DFS market. If you're talking about a sleeper under 3,500, he is plus 100 from what he was last week. Okay, but this over 37. Listen, I just said 37. I'm looking at the other number. The over 23.5 to me is, I'm telling you, to me, it is a no-brainer. It really is. Again, you don't expect a guy to go out there and he's not going to kill it, okay, by any means. Okay, you have to temper the expectations. You're talking about week 1, 49 yards, week 2, 13 yards, right? So he would have been over in week 1, under in week 2. He was minus 3 targets though in week 2. And again, it's all about game script, right? It's all about game script. They ran the ball a little more. Okay, they cut down the attempts from Justin Herbert against Dallas, and they should have won that game, but they didn't. Okay, well, that's another story for another day. But for me, it's the average 16.5 from week 1. Jalen Guyton was only 6.5 in week 2. That was the way Dallas defended him. So I think he gets above that high safety again. I think he gets open. And Jalen Guyton, for me, is a guy that definitely you can get on the prop market at over 23.5. I think again, one play, people. That is it. It's only one play. That's it. It's all you need. So before we get to the lock of the week, okay, because he is one of my favorite people. Again, because I've been talking about him all year long. Let's talk about Kansas City. And let's talk about Clyde EdwardsHelaire. Now, I am 100% fading Clyde EdwardsHelaire until I see any kind of positive results. 3.2 yards per carry, okay, off of 12 and 13 carries. And that's not going to do it for me. It's just not going to do it. And it's a problem. There is no running game right now in Kansas City, and that's why they're struggling a little bit. Now, you say 37, 38 points, that's struggling. Yeah, but they don't look crisp, and it's because they have no running game. They need somebody to take it over, and they're trying to give this kid every opportunity. He's just not there. So for me, there's a reason why his value has dropped considerably. Listen, a $4,800 number. You have 3 running backs in Kansas City. 4,800. You have Williams for 4,700 and McKinnon for 4,000. Who is going to? I still think McKinnon will eventually be the running back 1. I do, as long as his knees can handle it and can be healthy. But this is a week that I'm going to fade Clyde EdwardsHelaire. Okay, this is a week I'm going to fade Clyde EdwardsHelaire. But let's get back to the other end of the spectrum when we go at running backs who have actually shined, okay? And again, I was really big on fading Joe Mixon. And because, number one, the average is what really deterred me from putting a lot of stock into him. So week 1 in Minnesota, he's 4.5 yards per carry, which is what you want. Week 2 against Chicago, really good defensive line, 3.5. So there he goes. He drops, right? So this is a week, again, where I would fade Joe Mixon because these games in this division between Cincinnati and Pittsburgh almost always go under. They're always back and forth, pull it out kind of games, 20-17. Big Ben's already hurting. I don't see this being a flashy game. So for me, again, his number has dropped considerably, $700. He went from 7,000 to 6,300, and I think that's a reason why. I think the reason why is because, again, that they expect that game to be low. That's why I like the Austin Ekeler pick, right? That's why I like the Chris Carson pick. I like those picks because you got to look around the NFL and you have to think, what are these game scripts going to be, right? So even in Arizona, you quite possibly, okay, could look at it, James Conner again. Now, I know I was in on James Conner last week. I told you that. Again, the thing that's been bugging me about James Conner is I think we now see at 3.3 yards per carry that he quite possibly could be who we thought he was. Right. So he's going to be a guy that's touchdown dependent. He's not going to break off any runs. So it's definitely going to be Chase Edmonds out there as long as he can still produce. And you could see it. His attempts went from 16 to 8. They're already seeing in James Conner that, and I thought he was going to take over this role. I really did. He just looks like he might be spent, man. Just like he might be spent. So, and it's a shame because he's on a good team. He's going to score a lot of points, right? He's on a good team that's going to score a lot of points. Now, one guy, okay, I got to mention before we get our lock of the week is my boy Javonte Williams. Okay, I've been talking about Javonte Williams. I'm going to continue to talk about Javonte Williams. Okay, he's 4,900. He bumps up 900 from his original value in week 1 of 4,000. He goes to 4,400, then goes to 4,900. And again, his attempts stay 14 and 13, exactly where you want to see him. He's averaging 4.1 yards per carry, which I do like to see. Now, he's not going to be heavily involved in the receiving share, but you want him at the running back share. I think this is a week in Denver against the Jets, inferior opponent, where we could see a breakout game for Javonte Williams. And if you're talking about 4,900 in the DFS market, that is definitely a way to go and definitely a way to cash your crown. 100%. Now let's get to the lock of the week here again. Couple minutes left. This is the alternative edge. I'm Tony Jigsaw Cotillo. You can follow me at TCotillo23. Always doing big things here at Sharp App. You got to follow Sharp App on all social formats. You see the coupon code. You see the live betting stream option right there. All your bets are in one spot. That's all I got to say. One-stop shop, man. One-stop shop. Okay? And don't forget the Discord. You got the Discord, you get the coaches, and my man John Sensational, the dude starts the Sharp Academy, teaches you everything you need to know about sports betting from a beginner level to, you go from novice to expert in about 3 hours, right? No, I'm just kidding. I take a little more, but it's really good for the novice to understand what the terms are from a professional handicapper who's been in the business for a long time. So speaking about professional, let's get to the end and the lock of the week here. This is my lock of the week. Sterling Shepard goes up plus 400. Sterling Shepard is the wide receiver 1 on the New York Giants. I don't care what anybody says about Kenny Galladay. Sterling Shepard is the guy 100%. Okay? All you need to do is look at what he's done, okay, over the past 2 weeks. He's asserted himself into that number 1 wide receiver role, okay? And it doesn't even matter if Galladay's healthy or not. I know he's questionable right now with the hip. The hip's still bothering. Come on, Kenny. Come on. It was bothering you in Detroit. Now it's bothering you in New York. But Sterling Shepard, 19 targets, 16 catches in 2 games, double digits on the yards per catch, okay? Has a 37-yarder as a long play. Shows he can still go long. It's not just Slayton, but he's the guy Danny Jones is looking to. And I was talking about this in the preseason, that this is a guy that Danny gravitated towards, and they developed a really good relationship. And I knew a lot of people were forgetting about him. I told him this is a guy that could absolutely win you a Super Bowl. And what I mean by that is he's a guy that you were either going to pick off the waiver wire, or he was a guy that everybody was going to forget about, that you took one of your last round picks, and he could essentially be the best receiver on your team. And God damn it, what has he done the last 2 weeks? He's been the best receiver on the Giants, and quite possibly at 27 and 17 points respectively, could have been your best receiver on your fantasy team and one of your best in your DFS lineup. So Sterling Shepard this week against the hapless Falcons. We talked about him earlier. Don't need to rehash. At 5,900 from a DFS value, he's a stone cold stud. Okay, plus 400 from last week. And the over for 61.5 is a no-brainer. Okay? It's a no-brainer. The first week, what does he do? 113 yards. The second week, what's he do? 94 yards. Are you kidding me? 61.5. I don't care. I'm buying into all the juice. I'm buying into the teas. I don't care. I'm going in 75 plus to me for Sterling Shepard. I think this is the lock of the week. 100%. So let's review, shall we? Jared Goff. Okay, we got the under for 38.5 attempts. We got Danny Dimes, the over 1.5 touchdowns. We got Austin Ekeler, the over 37.5 rushing yards, or I'd say receiving yards. And we got the under at 55.5. And we got Chris Carson at under 67.5 rushing. Probably scored twice, but under those rushing numbers. We got Derek Carr, double play right here. We got the over 0.5 interceptions and the over at 279.5 when we go to yards. Our man Adam Thielen, the red zone monster, all of a sudden over 5.5 receptions against no more Legion of Boom in Seattle. Jalen Guyton as the sleeper for Kansas City at 3,200 for DFS plus 100, over 23.5. He'll get it on one play. You watch, 30-yard touchdown. I'm calling it right now. And then our sleeper of the alternative edge week 3 is going to be Sterling Shepard, 5,900 over 61.5. Everybody, it's been a blast as always. Tony Jigsaw Cotillo. Give me a follow at TCotillo23. The Sharp app. Follow it, get to know it, understand it. You see it on the hat, you see it on the shirt, you see it on the screen, you see it everywhere. Green is the way to be. So, as always, Everybody stay safe and stay healthy. Good luck on the market. Get these props in. Let's get some money, and let's have an unbelievable, glorious, no pun intended, Bobby Roode, weekend.